Hypothetical question for you. Imagine it's 1963 and you're driving down to Malibu Beach to meet Lance Carson and Miki Dora, and you have one of the boards that you're making today, but you're in the past, you're in 1963. You have a product from the future, you're going to meet Miki Dora, Lance Carson, so they can demo the boards. What reaction would you get from them, you think?
Good day, aloha. This is Tupi Cabrera from Longboardarian. Today, I'm in Ventura, California at the famous C Street. And I'm here because I'm gonna be interviewing a true legend of the shaping world. And his name is William Blinky Hubina. Let's go and meet him. He's been shaping since 1963. Come on.
Good morning, Blinky. Blinky Hubina here in the house at Ventura Surf Shop in his shaping room. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Not bad for an old guy.
Cool. Well, I thank you so much for doing this interview with Longboardarian, Longboardarian TV on YouTube channel. And I have a question for you. When did you start building boards?
Whoa. The first board I ever built was with a buddy, which was a kit we got from Surfer Magazine in 1959. But then when I was going to college in Ventura in the early 60s, I went to work for Tom Morey with the Australian Surf Shop in 1963. Yeah, it's like 56 years ago.
56 years ago. How many boards have you shaped?
Thousands. It'd be hard to put a number on it.
Okay,
You know,
okay.
For a while when I was shaping shortboards, I was doing 50 a week.
Who is your mentor? I guess you already mentioned some mentors there, but do you have any other mentors in your shaping skills, in your shaping education, so to speak, that you want to mention?
Yeah, well, you know, the primary mentor for me would have been Bob Cooper. When we started Morey Pope, that was in 1964. In the summer, I was Colin Morey's first employee, and then they hired Bob Cooper as our manager in 1965. And so Bob Cooper, he'd been building boards for a long time with Radiator. He was a great shaper. But anyway, Bob Cooper was mainly my mentor. He taught me pretty much everything I know. And then another guy named Richard Deese was also worked at Morey Pope, and he was a really handy glasser and a beautiful shaper. So I think Richard Deese and Bob Cooper are probably my mentors that I would suggest, you know, that I had, the ones I know, the ones I remember.
How has building boards today changed to building boards, let's say in the 60s, especially in the context of longboards? In the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. How has that changed?
Well, a lot of stuff has changed. You know, in the 60s, the boards we were building were heavily glassed. The blanks were heavy. It was the beginning of the surfing revolution in the 60s. It was called the golden age of surfing, where they were trying all kinds of stuff to see which boards worked. There were only a few companies in the 60s. There weren't very many surfboard builders. So I was fortunate enough to go to work for Tom Morey when we had Morey Pope. The boards then were very heavy. They didn't have rockers that we do now. The boards were hard to ride, they were heavy. A lot of work making them. We glassed them quite heavy with 210s on the deck and 210s on the bottom and glass on fins, and then the color was all in pigment, where now it's done that way. So a lot of stuff has changed. Those boards, they didn't ride that well, some real well, but they don't ride nothing like the boards of the new age. And then towards the end of the 60s, a lot of the boards became lighter. People were switched from the Valon cloth to the silene cloths. And instead of 210s, they were going to a 10-6 on the deck and a 6 on the bottom, making lighter weight boards, which were more maneuverable. And then the problem with that was, by the time that era of the surfing and the longboards was ending, in the middle of that, Tom Morey had created the fin box for the longboard. We got rid of the longboard, the glassed on skag. People could change up how the board rides with the fin. In the middle of that thing, in the late 60s, the shortboard came in. And the shortboard came in with so fast that it pretty much put the longboard business out of business. So by 1970, 71, there weren't many people making longboards. I started making shortboards in '67, and Morey Pope didn't start making surfboards until like 1969 or something, and they were way behind. And it took all the other shops, Gordon's and Smith's, the Dewey Webbers, Henson, all those shops were left behind because the shortboarders were shortboard people. People making shortboards in San Diego, Santa Barbara, Ventura, all over the country, and that took over. And then basically, then your longboard pretty much disappeared in the '70s. There were some diehards and people that still made them, but pretty much everything was going to shorter boards.
So are you telling me that there was a time when you had a lot of orders for longboards and all of a sudden those orders stopped? Is that how it happened?
Well, what happened was, just like in my instance, I left Morey Pope in '67 with Dennis Ryder to start making boards. We branched off from Morey Pope. And in 1967, I started making shortboards. So Morey Pope was still making longboards. By the time they figured out what was going on, I already sold every kid in Ventura Surfboards, and shortboards were taking over, longboard sales were dwindling. And so between '67 and '70s, the transition from longboards into the shorter, more movable boards. Now the first shortboards weren't real short, you know, they were in the 7 to 8 foot area. And then when you got into the later '60s, in '68, '69, they started being small. And in the early '70s, they were small. So huge transition.
Okay.
And so basically the shortboard took that longboard out of the picture all over the country.
Hey Blinky, what do you have behind you?
That's a lot of balsa wood. I make about two to three balsa wood boards a year.
Nice.
I have, you pretty much can't get the blanks, but I have about 13 of them left.
Okay,
So-
okay. Are they coming from Costa Rica or where's that balsa coming from?
The balsa wood I have came over here at about 1999 from Ecuador. So
Okay.
that's how long this stuff's been around.
Wow. What decade or years was longboarding the most dead, and when did you see it starting to take life again?
Well, I think longboarding started to die in the early '70s. And then it had a resurgence in the late '80s to early '90s, basically the early '90s, because that's when we reformed the Santa Barbara Surf Club, the Ventura Surf Club. Different surf clubs started showing up, and people started longboarding. Like in 1990, I started making longboards for myself and my kids to compete in contests with the surf clubs. So we traveled all over, go surf in Steamer Lane, go to Dana Point, go to Malibu. In the '90s was a resurgence of the longboard.
Okay.
Even though the shortboards are still going strong,
Exactly.
people were going to the traditional longboard.
So based on your answer, well, what would you say is the general difference between longboards from the mid '90s, let's say, to the longboards that are being made today, especially made by you and other top longboard shapers?
Yeah. Well, what's happened is the longboards went in two different directions. The longboards went to high performance longboards, lighter 3-fin longboards, not single fins, a single fin and a tri setup with side bites. And they also went to their traditional longboard, which was later on. We really started to get a lot of high performance longboards in the '90s. And then in 2000, we started drifting more into the traditional things. People started getting labels, like people were bringing back Jacobs and people were bringing back Bing and Hobie and bringing back all these old names and making traditional boards after 2000. Now there's a lot of traditional boards going on, you know, really heavily. Boards that look like the boards from the '60s, but they have changes in rocker and changes in design that make them actually work. The '60s boards were limited in rocker. They were barely making blanks then. I mean, the first polyurethane blanks were made in the '60s. They weren't around. And so by having these blanks you can change the rocker with and change the way and the weights of the boards perform better. There are shapers that do a great job. The boards are beautiful and they're more ornate. We're able to do more in colors on boards than we could in the '60s and '70s. '60s and '70s is pigment. Now we've got tints in the glass. You can do more with the surfboards just because of technology. Fin shapes are all different. So right now the boards that are coming out, they're the traditional longboard. They're gorgeous. You know, and they sell for a lot of money because it cost me $800 to $1,000 to make a longboard sometimes, but they're just beautiful.
Hypothetical question for you. Imagine it's 1963 and you're driving down to Malibu Beach to meet Lance Carson and Miki Dora, and you have one of the boards that you're making today, but you're in the past, you're in 1963. You have a product from the future, you're going to meet Miki Dora, Lance Carson, so they can demo the boards. What reaction would you get from them, you think?
Well, number one, they'd look at it and probably think I was crazy. Their style then is different than the longboarding style right now. They're very stylistic surfers, a lot of turning, a lot of style, layback turns, left go right turns, all these things. And they had to actually put more body motion into the boards then to make them turn, because you needed to swing that weight. The boards now that are the same weight, they're lighter than the old traditional boards. They turn easier and so forth. But I think if I could have got them to ride the surfboards, they would love it. It'd be a whole new dimension for them. They'd be turning quicker. They could stay on the nose longer. It'd be like their dream came true. I know Dora, he stuck to traditional boards forever. And then when he moved to Africa, when he's in South Africa, he went to a mid-size board, which was amazing for Dora. So Lance Carson, they still make Lance Carson boards, the same board he made before. I'm sure they made some adjustments in rocker, but Lance Carson's a traditional surfer, a stylist. People just marvel at the positions he could get himself into. So if they had the modern longboard back then, you would have seen some amazing stuff. But then it would have been the golden age of surfing where all the learning was coming in. The Gidget and Big Wednesday. The golden age of surfing, it would have changed it.
So give me names of longboarders you think best represent longboarding with their surfing.
Well, right now, probably one of the guys that does it the best is Skip Fry. He's been making these traditional longboards called gliders forever. He's out there. The modern longboard surfer, the CJ Nelsons, Tyler's out there surfing. He's a great surfer and a shaper. Anderson's, they make great boards, they're good shapers. They surf what they make. Wayne Rich is an excellent surfer. He's in Santa Barbara up here with us. And Wayne's an incredible shaper, really a top-notch surfer. So there's a lot of people around. And the thing is that with the advent of social media, there is a new champion type surfer born every day, because these kids watch media and the product's available to them. And there's great surfers in every town. Our town has some wonderful local surfers that can stay on the nose all day long. So you're going to find great surfers all over the place. There's people that people look up to, but a lot of kids are surfing better than the people they're looking up to. It's just like if you look at even like the shortboarding, people never thought you could do 360s and you're on a shortboard. Well, they filmed it, so one kid says, well, if you can do it, I can do it. So people are trying stuff that they've never been before.
Okay, we're gonna do the 10. Okay, here we go. Ventura Surfing.
Oh, Ventura Surfing, great. C Street, Rincon.
Ventura Longboarding.
Longboarding, the Covert Rincon, Covert Ventura Point.
The new school of shapers, longboard shapers.
Longboard shapers, any kid that shapes a board by hand is great. Forget the milling machine.
Lance Carson.
One of the best surfers ever known.
Women longboarding.
Incredible. There are more women surfing now than before. There's some women that surf better than men.
2+1 high performance longboard.
2+1 is not a high performance. A quad is.
Okay. Boards made in China.
Boards made in China, send them back, and Trump put a tariff on them. That's true, though.
yeah, I agree. Favorite thing to eat after a hard day of working in the shaping room?
Oh, boy. After a hard day of working in the shaping room, if I get home at 5 o'clock, I'm going to crack a beer and have my wife make me something good to eat.
Okay. Beer, wine, cocktail, or none of the above?
They're all good, but in small proportions. I'm kind of a beer guy.
Okay. Thank you so much, Blinky. Thank you for your time. You are a legend in the surfing community and in the community in Ventura. Thank you for your time again.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.